Hey everyone, welcome back to Jennifer's 11 o'clock. If anybody has any questions before we start, I see Gloria coming back and Michelle. Hi guys, it's great to know you're here. We might have Hi. We might have a few guests jump in. I hope that some other people may show up. So I'll just let them in. Jen's really good at not getting distracted by that, so we can just go ahead and go.
Okay, for this next presentation, we're going to be talking about SMART goals. And SMART goals are probably some of my favorite things to talk about. They're kind of hard for providers and service providers and sometimes teachers to write, but when done correctly, they cover a lot of ground and they provide a lot of information, and they can tell parents and teachers alike a lot of information about a child and where a child is going and where a child has actually been. And so SMART goals are probably my favorite part of the IEP process. So we're just going to get started. Like everything else in special education, the word SMART is just an acronym. I think we use acronyms for almost everything in special education. So the S in SMART is specific, M is measurable, the A means achievable because we want things to be achievable for our kiddos. The R, I've seen it several ways as something like relevant. I like results oriented a little better. And then the T is for time bound. Well-written IEPs will always use SMART goals throughout their IEP. It is kind of best practice. IDEA does not specify that you need to write a SMART goal. SMART goals actually are not, they're not specific to IEPs. They're not specific to special education. They were actually developed in the world of business and is something that education has adapted and brought into the world of special education for our kiddos that have disabilities. So it's interesting that it actually came from business into education and not the other way around. So that S, being specific, sometimes it's a little difficult. I know, we all want to be specific, but sometimes it's not always very clear. But when we're writing a goal, we want it to be specific and clear that every person in the room understands exactly what it is that we're trying to measure and what we're trying to get that kiddo to do. So we want that goal to be very specific. What academic achievement, what functional performance are we trying to measure? What skills are we planning to teach? What do we want that child to be able to do? So being very specific, and as a teacher, I taught for 20 years. I taught social studies though. So a lot of the time it was writing. And that was one of the things that every kid always had a problem with, was being detailed and specific. And even as adults, I think we always struggle with being detailed and specific. And we like to use the words like stuff and things that really don't hold any meaning. So, a SMART goal should be very specific, exactly what you want that child to learn, what you want them to be able to do, what performance is being measured. That M is for measurable. And I think this one's sometimes hard depending on the goal. So your goal should always be data driven. If you can't give a number to it, then it shouldn't be in your goal. You shouldn't be trying to measure it. So you want your goals to be measurable. We need to have some clear-cut data in order to prove that this child is meeting this goal. And that just allows for interpretation, not just by teachers who are pretty much interpreting the progress of the student, but also by parents. Parents make up a part of that IEP team, and they are the probably most valuable member of your IEP team. They have the most information about that child. And so you want your parents to be able to measure the progress of their child. And it's the hardcore evidence that you need to prove that the child is meeting their goals, that the child is on track to meet that goal by the end of that IEP year. So you want your goals to be measurable, always, always measurable. Numbers, hardcore facts. Achievable. So we know that an IEP stands for an individualized education plan, but I have heard lots of teachers, lots of special ed teachers, lots of schools, lots of parents, lots of SPED directors say that, you know, oh yeah, we do that one for each child. Every child gets that goal. But the whole point of the IEP, the whole point of an individualized education program is that it's to be unique to each child. So every special needs child is different, they're unique. And just because a goal might work for one child doesn't mean it's going to work for another child. And so each goal that you write for that child needs to be unique to that specific child. It needs to be realistic for that child. It needs to be something that they can attain. Writing a goal for a child who has an intellectual disability that is asking them to be able to solve equations, the quadratic equation in algebra, is probably really unrealistic. That child may never be able to do that. So you want your goals to be achievable. You want your child to be able to realize that they're making some progress towards that goal. So achievable, realistic to the child. And then the R, I like results driven. So you always use your results and you always write your goal with the consideration of the data that you already have. So if you have a child that's just starting to count and can count to 5, expecting that child to be able to count to 100 may be too much. But expecting that child to be able to count to 25 and then count objects and understand that those numbers, when they count, actually can represent things that they can count, right? So using the data that you already have collected about that child, writing your goals with that data in mind is super important. And you want those goals to describe what the student's able to do. You need to be able to write the goal in a way so that if Joe Schmo off the street is looking at the goal, he knows exactly what that child is supposed to be able to do by the end of that IEP year. So if the goal is murky, Joe is going to read on grade level by the end of this IEP year. Well, what does grade level mean? And what does grade level look like? And is he going to be in the middle of the grade level, or is he going to be at the end of the grade level? Is he going to be, you know, second grade, first month? Where exactly is he going to be by the end of that year? So you want it to be specific enough and written with those results and that data in mind of where you're going for the future. IEPs should always be time bound. Your goals should always be time bound. And most of them state by the end of this IEP year, or they give the date of the IEP that was written and make it for the next year. So, but you also want them to give a starting point of where the student is now. So a lot of times I see IEPs that say baseline. This is where the kiddo is right now. This is the baseline, and this is where we're going. And this is where we're gonna go next. You should always provide objectives and or benchmarks that enable monitoring at regular intervals. And I know a lot of Wyoming teachers don't like to do that, but it makes a parent's life so much easier, particularly since most schools are providing progress monitoring to parents at quarterly moments in the school year. So if the quarter ends at the end of October, parents aren't getting that progress from September through October until the end of October at the end of that quarter. And so if you're expecting the child to meet a benchmark by the end of October, then having that written in the IEP, and the parent can go back and look at the IEP and then read your progress notes and say, oh yeah, my son's really working towards meeting that goal. He's on schedule to meet that goal by the end of this IEP year. So using those objectives and benchmark sections in your IEP is really important for parents. It makes monitoring for them so much easier if they can see where their child should be at the end of quarter 1, at the end of quarter 2, at the end of quarter 3, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of where do you begin? So, we can talk about SMART goals all day long, but where should you start? So IEPs, I look at them like a house of cards. So they're kind of like building blocks. If you don't have a strong foundation for your SMART goals to kind of stand on, they kind of fall apart. So if you don't start with the big blocks on the bottom, you put all the blocks on put the small blocks on the bottom, big blocks on top, it's going to fall apart. So you should always put your bigger blocks on the bottom. And that's where the strengths, preferences, and educational needs section of your IEP comes from. And that PLAF, the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. Those are probably the most important parts of your entire IEP. You need those parts of your IEP to provide the data that you need to write those SMART goals for a child. So anytime that you're sitting down and you're writing an IEP, or as a parent reading through an IEP, and the strengths and the preferences and the educational section and that present level section is only one page, then it's not enough information to really provide a teacher with enough data to write those SMART goals. So you really want this section, those present level sections and the strengths and preference section to really be strong and really provide a really good foundation for those SMART goals to stand on. So as you read through those strengths and weaknesses, that educational needs section is really important. The present levels section is really important. As you read through those sections on your child's IEP, if there's an educational need that kind of screams out at you in that section, it's like, oh, I'm down here, then there should be a goal written specifically for that educational need. So if you're looking at an evaluation and you're at an eligibility meeting and you're reading through the IEP and there is a note in the present levels that says that little Johnny is having a really difficult time sitting in his seat and is constantly poking at the back of the little girl's head that sits in front of him, then there should be a behavior goal for little Johnny in his IEP. There should be a goal that addresses his behavior in the classroom that he should be working towards so that he can better his behavior, so that he can focus on gaining FAPE. That's what it's all about, is FAPE, right? So if there is an educational need that screams at you from the present levels, then there needs to be a goal written for that particular need. I think the ones that trouble service providers the most, teachers the most, are behavior and attitude goals, because there's absolutely no way to measure have a good attitude. Susan's going to have a good attitude this year, or John or Jim is going to develop healthy peer relationships. We don't have any way to provide evidence of a good attitude or what a healthy peer relationship is going to always look like. So you need to make those goals measurable. And to do that, you kind of have to look at all the events surrounding it. So look at all the events surrounding those goals. So maybe, Jim is going to, when irritated by peers or when triggered by peers, he's going to ask to take a break 4 out of 5 times in 3 over the next year. Okay, so look at all the events that kind of surround the behavior, looking at the environmental factors that surround that kind of behavior. What are the patterns that go with that behavior? Where can you kind of intervene? Is this enough of a behavior pattern where you may need a behavior intervention plan to really help this child, as opposed to just a goal? So, and then identifying the results of their behavior. All behavior occurs for a reason. It's all cause and effect. Children act a specific way because something else has already happened. So what are the results of their behavior? What are they trying to gain? What is the function of that behavior? So they're trying to gain something, or they're trying to prove something. What are they trying to prove? So just some examples. Jane will make 2 friends this year. Well, but a better goal would be by January 31st of 2023, during a 15-minute recess, Jane will initiate play with at least 2 different classmates and sustain that play for 10 minutes without adult intervention and 3 out of 5 recess observations. So here it's now time bound. Instead of she's just going to make 2 friends this year. We've given it some data that we can actually measure and observe. We can actually see her initiate play with 2 different classmates, and we can time her for 10 minutes, and we can actually see it happen 3 out of 5 different times. Also, Joe will read at grade level by the end of the school year. I really like that one. I see that one a lot. Joe will read at grade level by the end of the year. This is a better goal for Joe. By January 31st of 2023, Joe will read a grade level passage with accuracy, appropriate rate, and expression at 110 words per minute with 90% accuracy and 3 out of 5 consecutive trials. So here we've made it time bound. We've given it some data that we can actually collect. We've said that he's going to read it at 110 words per minute. So now we can actually collect some data and at 90% accuracy so that we can collect that data over time and actually provide the parents with some progress monitoring so they can know how well Joe is doing at getting to meeting his goal and being successful with his particular goal. So IEP goals cannot, these are the big no-nos. They can't be broad statements. They just can't. If it's a broad statement, then we don't know what it is that you're trying to measure. They also can't be subjective. So words that are subjective in nature, like sometimes, approximately, good, bad, naughty, nice, all of those things are very subjective. What's naughty to me may not be naughty to you. And you have to be super careful with your goals because they can very well deny a child FAPE. So you have to be really careful when you're writing those goals to, one, be sure that you can in fact implement them in your classrooms, and 2, that you're measuring the correct information for that child so that you're not accused of denying that child FAPE in the future. So you need to be really careful when writing goals, that you're writing goals that are specific, that are measurable, that are achievable for that child, that do come from the results and are driven by the results, and that are time bound. So it's all about best practice. This is just best practice. IDEA doesn't state that goals need to be SMART goals. It just simply states that they need to be measurable, that all goals written should be measurable. And in 2004, with the new version of IDEA, they completely eliminated benchmarks and/or objectives, except for students who are taking alternative assessments. But when you add those benchmarks or objectives back to your IEP, it does allow parents to more easily monitor their child's progress. It's going to make things easier for the teacher if you add them up front so that you can more easily monitor that child's progress over time. IDEA doesn't also tell you how often you need to send progress monitoring to parents. It does say that you need to send progress monitoring to parents, but it doesn't tell you how often. And most schools just send it quarterly with report cards, which for most parents, that's fine. But if the parent doesn't know what that benchmark is for the end of that quarter, if they don't know where that cutoff is for that goal, it's going to make it very difficult for them to understand exactly where the child is at meeting that goal and whether or not the child's going to actually meet that goal by the end of that particular IEP year. So having those benchmarks and objectives just makes everybody's life a little easier. The special ed teacher's life's going to be easier because then they're not going to have parents calling and saying, hey, is my kiddo going to meet this goal? Is this going to happen? So, just adding that stuff up front to the IEP is just best practice. It's just best practice. It makes everyone's life a little easier, and your parents are really going to appreciate it in the long run if that information is included. So here again, if you have more questions or if you need more information, you can visit us at the website. WPIC.org. You can give me a phone call. You can send me an email. If I don't answer my phone, I'm probably on the phone with a family trying to work out something with them. Just leave me a voicemail and I will definitely give you a call back. If there are any questions, I'm going to check the chat box and see if there are any questions about SMART goals. Okay. Carol.